Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my neighbor trespassed on my private property with her friends to have an illegal pool party. They then called the police on me saying that I am a creep and deserve to get arrested and trespassed from my own property. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one starts like this. If any of you, like me, live in the UK, you will know how hot our summers can get. Well, let's be honest, they don't get that hot, we are just not used to the heat and our houses are not equipped for keeping heat out. You will also know that pools are uncommon here, and the next best thing being a homemade slip and slide or a paddling pool that can fit no more than 2 toddlers. So yes, I know that the heat is usually an issue, but I would never have thought anyone would go to the lengths my neighbor did to cool down. I'm calling her my neighbor for the sake of this story, but in reality she lives about a 5-minute drive away from me, all the way down to the bottom of the town. I was fortunate enough to inherit a lovely property from my late grandfather. It's a quaint little rural property at the top of a town in the north of Wales. The land stretches for a good few acres and the house itself is set atop a small hill that stretches all the way to a small river near the bottom. It is a lavish property to say the very least, and in this economy I'm very lucky to own it. I've done my own refurbishments over the years, the main one being adding an outdoor pool next to my house. It took a lot of money and time, but once it had been done, it added nearly 100k to the property value. In the winter it's not much use of course, but in the summer it really is a blessing. So that takes us to the start of this story, when it was the first few weeks of July and the air was heating up. A woman had knocked on my door. "Hello, would you mind if we used your pool?" a woman asked as I opened the door. She gave me a sweet smile and I would have said yes if it was not for 6 children standing behind her, all of which looked to be full of cold. "I'm sorry, no," I replied and began to shut the door. "Why not? What on earth is the issue?" The woman put her foot out to stop the door closing. "You have 6 kids with you. Kids make messes and they all look ill." "These are my kids and I can promise you they don't make any mess, nor are they ill." "Well, they look certainly ill." "It's just a bit of a summer cold, everyone gets it, I'm sure you will cope." "Look ma'am, I'm sorry but you cannot use my pool." She stared at me for a moment as if thinking I would cave and just let her use it if she stared long enough. "Why don't you go to the public pool? It's half a mile south of town," I suggested, to which her face scrunched up. "We cannot use a public pool. Think of all the germs that are just swimming around in there." She flailed her hands to emphasize this point. "So germs are a problem for you, but they shouldn't be for me?" I asked with a smirk, knowing I had caught her in a knot. She stumbled over her next words before turning around and stomping off to her car, and the kids following. I stupidly thought that would be the end of that woman, but alas, the next day she was back and this time she had another woman with her and her kids once again. "Hey, my sister is saying you won't let her use this pool, but I think that cannot be right, because who would deny someone of such a small request?" the second woman asked, batting her eyelashes. If it was not for the persistence and rudeness of the last woman, I probably would not have minded them using the pool, but hey, they were just being ridiculous now. "It's my pool, you're not entitled to be able to use it," I replied, scything as I crossed my arms. "That's ridiculous. We came all this way and now we cannot use this pool?" the original woman asked. "Again, it's my pool, so no." "At least we asked. We could have just jumped in." "Gosh, how can you be so… you know what, I think we all got off on the wrong foot. I'm Julie. I live at the bottom of the town near the shops. Me and my family don't have the luxury to have such a pool, and as you know, it has been roasting this time of year. Would there be any way we could use your pool for as little as 10 minutes? Julie, the original woman asked. "I'm Sam, and you know what? Sure, as long as you promise to clean up after yourselves. And this is a one-time thing, okay?" "Thank you," Julie screeched, and the 2 women and 6 kids ran off and jumped straight into the pool. They had come wearing their swimming suits. I sighed, annoyed that I ended up caving to their wishes, and went inside. Half an hour later, I could still hear them outside, but they were not being too loud, so I just let them stay. I remember falling asleep and waking up to silence, and looking outside, I saw that they had gone. But had they cleaned up after themselves? Of course not. There was food wrappers all over the place, the deck chairs were in different places, and some of the flowers I had planted near the pond had been trampled on. So wow, this is what I get for graciously allowing them to use my pool. I cried angrily, cleared up the mess, muttering to myself as I did so, "They better not come around again, or I swear." Alas, they did, the following day. "Hi Sam. I know you said it was a one-time thing, but could we perhaps use your pool again?" Julie asked. She had her children with her again, plus a few other friends. "No, you left my pool area in an absolute state the other day. I might have agreed otherwise." Listen, you know how kids are. You said your kids don't make a mess, and I thought even if they did, you would have the common courtesy to clean up after them anyway. The woman looked between her friends, all of their expressions unreadable, but I learned later exactly what they were silently plotting. You're right, we should have cleaned up, and it was rude of us to come asking again. Good day. And with that off, they went. At 2 in the morning that night, I woke up to the sound of loud music playing outside. Alarmed, knowing I live quite isolated, I dashed to my window to look outside where the music was coming from. I nearly fainted when I saw what was happening down below. Julie was in my pool along with her kids, strange time for them to still be awake by the way, plus the friends from earlier, and about 20 other people that she must have dragged along. She was basically throwing a pool party in my pool on my property. I dashed downstairs as fast as I could. What are you all doing? Get out of my pool right this instant! I demanded, halting the music on their record player. No, we are here now. Let us be, Julie yelled back, her words slurring, so I figured alcohol was also involved. Turn the music back on, someone else called out. Guys, I'm not gonna ask again, get out of here. Call the police on this creep, another guest spoke up. I watched as someone got on the phone to the police, gobsmacked. How could they possibly think that they were in the right in this moment? I decided to just wait until the cops showed up. I would have needed to phone them anyway. Because of my rather remote location, it took a quick minute for them to arrive, in which time everyone carried on partying like nothing was wrong. So what seems to be the issue here? Who phoned in? An officer asked once they arrived on scene. This man is being a total creep. We are trying to have a pool party and he just came out of nowhere. He is not invited. Julie spoke as she climbed out of the pool. Sir, this is my house. Honestly, I told them they couldn't use the pool and here they are throwing a party and they still won't leave. We all went back and forth for a couple more minutes until I ended up pulling up the CCTV footage on my phone, which showed them asking for permission, me saying no, and then them creeping over with all their stuff at early hours in the morning. And who's the head of all of this? The officer asked. Almost everyone pointed to Julie. I pressed charges, of course, not that I needed to, but I figured it was the punishment she deserved. She ended up having to pay a hefty fine for any damages caused to my property, plus a fine for trespassing. Every other guest at the party also had to pay a smaller fine, which I'm sure will be the cause of the end of the friendship with Julie. To top it all off, Julie was arrested that very night for trespassing and making a false report to the police. Crime never pays off. Trust me, Julie, she will be confined to a very small space for quite a while now, but I'm not sure this entitled Karen really regrets what she did. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled, I got punished but made it right. I was working remotely for a staffing agency organizing and managing events. When I was initially hired on it, it was due to the fact that 3 employees were quitting. They all seemed to be leaving amicably to pursue other ventures, so I did not think anything of it. They had hired myself and one other person to replace them, and everything was going fine. Over time, I started to notice little things here and there, like issues due to miscommunication between the owners, married couple, and a heavy workload. A few months in, I was assaulted and had been injured pretty badly. It was really difficult, obviously, but I worked remotely, so I was still able to work. I told my bosses that I had an emergency and was injured and needed to take time off. Almost immediately, one of the owners called and left an angry-sounding voicemail. I called him back and ended up having to tell him that I'd been assaulted and went to the hospital and all of that. He seemed sympathetic, but near the end of the conversation, he noted that I was supposed to be managing an event that weekend, Friday to Sunday, and that they had no one else to manage it. He didn't do any of that, but his wife did. However, we always had at least 5 events we were organizing and managing at a time. I was afraid I would get fired, so I ended up having to work that weekend. It was not so bad, but I was in an incredible amount of pain, and due to my injuries, the doctor said they could not prescribe me any strong pain medication due to complications that may arise. I worked that weekend and pushed through. Shortly after that, they fired another employee and gave me her workload. Then they chose me to do a very long-running 2+ months event taking place in 2 different time zones. They initially decided the event would be split between myself and another employee. She was pregnant, it matters for context, due to the size of the program. So while I was dealing with the assault and healing, took 1 month for my injuries to heal, I was also doing the majority of the workload of this event. I was also having to plan a move, put my stuff in a storage unit, and living in a long-term sublet while I looked for a place. I was also organizing other events on top of that, so there were days where I would easily work 10+ hours. Eventually, the employee who was helping me went on maternity leave, so the whole program landed on my shoulders. One day, I got reprimanded for working overtime. I explained that the workload was heavy, and since I was managing events in 2 time zones, I was having to wake up super early in the morning, 4 AM, work during the day, take a long lunch, work some more, and then wrap up the other event, which ended in the evening, 10:30 to 11 PM. They basically told me that I needed to manage my time better. Well, I was not doing well mentally or physically, so my cognitive abilities were not the best. I was making small, easily fixable mistakes here and there, but nothing that was damaging or severely detrimental to the business. There were days I would just sit there crying at my desk. It was awful. Another employee had also been reprimanded for working overtime, and she was as swamped as I was. Eventually, one of my bosses emailed me and said I was still working too much overtime and that he wanted me to work only 5 hours on days where I was not managing the big event. I was relieved, honestly. I was looking forward to having more time for myself so I could heal. I made sure to email him back to confirm the non-show management days he wanted me to work 5 hours for the following week. Well, he did not tell his wife, the other owner, about my new hours, and she had a tendency to ramble about stuff during meetings, making them last way longer than they needed to be. One day we had a meeting in the morning that lasted 3 hours, and it was the first day I was to only work 5 hours. I did not even need to be in that meeting, but they forced me to stay and would get irritated if they knew myself or other employees were quietly working while listening to the meeting. After that meeting, the wife sends me messages on asking the progress of some things I was working on. She then added more things for me to do. The back and forth with her took about 20 minutes. I told her that I knew I would not have enough time to finish those things that day because I only had a little over an hour and a half to complete the other tasks I'd already been assigned. She had no idea what I was talking about, so I told her that her husband had reduced my hours on non-management days and forwarded her our email exchanges where he confirmed that I was only to work 5 hours that day. She got an attitude with me and said, "Well, these are high priority things and we need you to work on them. You can go ahead and work longer today." I told her I couldn't because I had confirmed a week prior and had made arrangements and was not able to work. So once I hit my 5 hours, I clocked out and put my phone on Don't Disturb, ignoring all the messages she was sending me. She ended up having to work on all the tasks she had given me late into the night. I continued to follow the new schedule and they just dumped my workload onto other employees or had to do it themselves. I eventually got fired because they said that was basically the last straw, but I was so relieved and also got an unemployment benefits even though they tried to fight it. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. I almost killed my coworker. Am I the a-hole? I'm at a loss here, guys. Realistically, I know I'm in the clear. Legally, I'm in the clear for sure. So I'm being vilified by my co-workers and I'm genuinely considering quitting my job because of this mess. So I work a pretty standard day job and at night I help my friend at her restaurant, which serves an assortment of Thai cuisine. To be honest, I'm insanely picky, but I fell in love with this peanut sauce the main chef makes and he showed me how to make it, so about once a week I take it on either noodles or stir fry to my day job for lunch. People know this and a handful have tried it. It smells nutty, it tastes nutty, it's white girl pad thai basically. Lately my lunches have been disappearing though, or I will open my lunchbox to find half of my food missing. I've tried addressing it, but nothing has been changing, and I was pretty sure it was one of the new hires that was doing it, but I had no proof. Until now. Thursday I took my noodles and my entire Tupperware was missing, which has not happened before. I'm pissed, but what can I do? A coworker shared her pizza with me and that was that until today. My boss confronted me and accused me of poisoning my noodles because his daughter, one of the new girls, borrowed my lunch and had to be hospitalized. Turns out she is severely allergic to nuts, ate some, and boom, anaphylaxis. She used an EpiPen, had to be hospitalized, and now her dad is trying to hold me accountable for her bills and condition, but I just don't see it. Why should I pay? I don't mark my food as an allergen because I'm not allergic to it, and she was dumb enough to steal from me and eat something she cannot have. But he's being hateful, and some of my older coworkers are icing me out because I warned him that I would report any harassment to HR if he tried anything funny. brown-nosers, I guess. My friend is aware and offered me a full-time job, but I cannot just help but feel it's unfair. At the same time, I could have killed his daughter though. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments whether you think OP is the a-hole here for almost killing someone. And that someone being a thief. Comment number 1, not the a-hole, go to HR immediately and make them aware of what is going on. You did absolutely nothing wrong and your boss's behavior is 100% inappropriate. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, go to HR pronto, don't threaten HR, get this on file, see if you can switch departments or supervisors. Report both your boss and his daughter the food thief. Update, I did email the HR rep and let her know of the situation. She has been on vacation and gets back tomorrow, so I don't know if she's aware of what's been going on since last week. I should note that I work weekends most weeks, not quite a 8 to 5 MF job, but yeah. My coworkers mostly chilled out by the end of my shift, thankfully, after I explained to the nosiest friendlier person that I always bring peanut sauce dish. I guess the general assumption was that I somehow found out who has been stealing lunches and decided to poison them or something. Also, to answer a common question, this was the first time my pad thai was stolen, and no, I'm not the only victim of the lunch thief. And by the way, ripe stars, side note here from someone who lives in Thailand, usually there shouldn't be any peanut sauce even anywhere near a pad thai. It really does not belong together. Anyway, I usually take a late lunch and I'm not the only one, so I'm guessing the lady who was stealing food decided what left is a free-for-all. F her, I guess. My boss said it was an HR issue when I tried talking to him about lunches disappearing, and HR always said they would look into it or further into it, and nothing ever happened. Furthermore, we are 100% not allowed to eat at our desks unless you have a medical reason for it, so that was not an option either. And well, I'm assuming she's fine, but I don't know the severity of her allergy or how much she ate before she had her reaction. I'm not privy to her medical info, sorry guys. Suing sounds like a great revenge, but probably not worth the cost of a lawyer. My friend let me take tonight off just to complain about everything, and I'm probably gonna take her job offer. One person was right, by the way, even if everything settles down, I don't want to deal with a potentially hostile or reactive workplace like this anymore. It's not a career with much room for upwards mobility, and I don't feel welcome in our group meeting today. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Cheating girlfriend. I had been dating this girl for almost 7 years. We lived together 6 years of that time. My line of work was electronic consulting, setting up systems with tons of sensors. Good money, but a lot of travel hours. Just setting the stage here. Anyhow, at one point I got the feeling that something was off. Nothing I could put my finger on, but a gut feeling. I'm pretty good to follow my feelings, so I decided to put some proof in the pudding. While she was out, I had placed a sound-activated recorder in each room of the condo. Very small device as the storage was on my office PC. This was done on a Friday afternoon. I spent the weekend with her and had a good time. Sunday night before bed, I took my luggage and tools out to my car and also popped a GPS tracker on her car. I left the next morning and headed to my next site. Plan was I was to be away for 2 weeks. I talked with her daily for the first week. The second week was really hit and miss. Times that she was normally home, I would call and it would go to voicemail. I would ask her about it when I spoke to her again, and I got quite a few excuses like work meetings, late dinners, helping her brother, etc. 2 weeks end and I come home. I head almost immediately to my office. I see a ton of activity on the recorders during the first week and barely anything the second, save a loud vehicle driving by. So I go back to the first week's recording and find that she is talking to some guy. To make it even better, she has it on speaker so I get to hear both sides of the call. Turns out she has been cheating from pretty much day one of our relationship. So I decided right then and there, revenge was in order. I had to find out who this guy was. Through some sleuthing, I found out she met this guy, his family and wife at a campground she worked at before I met her. Found out where they lived and then checked phone records. This being a few years back, people still had house phones, so I looked up the number. Great, it is listed. I called the number and a guy answered the phone. I was prepared for this, so in a professional voice I asked to speak to Mrs. Smith. He yelled for her and a woman got on the phone. I asked her if she knew my soon-to-be ex-girlfriend. She said yes, that they had invited her to their house a few times after meeting her at the campground. Wow, that was news to me. I told her we couldn't speak in detail right now, but if she would call me back when she was free to talk, I would explain everything. I gave her my cell number and hoped that she would be curious enough to call. Sure enough, 2 days later she called. I explained everything that I had recorded. At first she was very skeptical. I told her that I would make a copy of the recording and send it to her. She said okay, but still was skeptical. So my work was set in motion. I went to a local recording studio along with the files and explained what I needed. They took all of the separate recordings and put them together, so when she wandered through the house, it picked up from the different recordings to make the conversation complete. They then burned these audio recordings to CD, and it took 5 CDs to cover it all. I then mailed the CDs to Mrs. Smith, registered mail. Then I waited. About 10 days go by. She finally calls me. She is very calm. She tells me that the day before she went and filed divorce papers. Her husband works on an oil rig and he is out on the rig for the next 2 weeks. After she listened to the CDs I sent her, she gave them to her lawyer. Mr. XXX made a crap ton of money doing what he does, and so over the years they had bought a lot of toys like campground plots, boats, RV, etc., and she made it clear that she was going for half. I got off the phone laughing to myself. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy after the things I heard on those recordings. During all this time, I never said a word to the GF. I acted as normal as possible, and in fact I still left the tracker on her car. I didn't think that would produce anything. Things were quiet for another week, and then came the day when hell was starting to break loose. My girlfriend was wandering around the house like she was lost. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me a friend of hers was getting a divorce. I said, "That's a shame," and went about my business. That evening she was out on the deck talking to someone on the phone. I did not really pay attention except for the fact that every so often she was raising her voice. The phone call ends, she comes back in and goes straight to the bedroom. I hear a bunch of rustling around, so I walk back to the door and see her packing clothes. I ask her what she is doing and get no reply. She finishes packing and walks out to her car, throws the suitcase in and leaves. 2 weeks go by and not a word from her. I got a call from Mrs. Smith and she updated me on her world. She had her husband served with the papers and infidelity was the reason. He denied, of course, but she was able to throw details that she said stopped him dead in his tracks. She confirmed the phone call that my GF had the night she left was with her. She said she never raised her voice, but my ex-girlfriend tried swearing up and down that nothing ever happened. Mrs. XXX then put out some details to the GF, enough to let her know that she was caught. Mrs. XXX implied that she found out on her own and her next step was to tell me. That is why GF left so quickly. So this leaves my handling of the GF. Credit card gone. Car? I called to have wrapped. Utilities arranged to be shut off. Insurance cancelled. All of her belongings left behind were sent by movers to her dad's house along with a note for the reason. By the way, he lives 2 states away. We lived in a condo, so I arranged for it to be shown for sublease. I was packed and moved in 4 days. New condo, gated community with a guard check. The car was then finally picked up. They got it while she was at work. The dealership worked with me on selling the car and I just paid the difference. Mrs. Smith did win her divorce decree and got her half. Mr. Smith never counted on anything, too worried about his company finding out the dirty secrets. Never heard from the ex ever again. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance and I hope to see you again tomorrow.